Hello, my name is Aiken Webster, and I'm going to show you my submission for the Winter 2020 ENCMP 100 Programming Contest. Firstly, this is 100% my own code. If I needed to know how anything worked, like a function for example, I found all my answers on the MATLAB form. My submission is a game called Murder the Algorithmic Inn. However, it is different than a traditional game, because what I've made is an engine that runs games, and a game that runs on that engine to go with it. The fact that this is an engine means that any user could make their own game and make a completely different experience. So I should explain what I've made. This game is a text-based adventure murder mystery, where you are the detective and you must investigate a crime scene and interact with rooms, containers, and items to collect information and make an accusation. As you can see, I can interact with objects and locations however I want. There are no fixed options to choose from. My game can do this because I've developed a very sophisticated method of interpreting user input, but more on that later. The inspiration for this game came from two of my favorite games, the 1984 game Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the classic board game Clue. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a text-based adventure. However, what made it special in my opinion was that the designer, Douglas Adams, was a very cruel man, so he never explicitly told the player what to do. Instead, he would give them hints, and this is something that I've tried to incorporate in my game. Likewise, I love the process of elimination mechanics of the game Clue. However, I find that the gameplay is too short and too easy. So in my game, I've tried to emulate this gameplay while also making it both longer and more challenging by only giving the player hints that help them deduce the suspects they can eliminate. When I sat down to design this game, I knew that I wanted two things. I wanted the game to be immersive and dynamic. I strongly dislike games where there are only a few things you can do, especially the ones where you simply enter a number or select an option from a menu to perform an action. So in my game, I decided to let the player type out the actions and do any action at any time because that felt more immersive. Moreover, I get bored of games really easily, so I wanted my game to change every time. And I wanted other people to be able to make their own games so I could play through different stories and scenarios that I never thought of, which meant that I needed a user-friendly way to build games. When it came to design the pseudocode, I realized that these two requirements of mine were going to make the coding process extremely complicated. But before I explain these two problems, let me explain my coding process and how I use pseudocode and many versions of my program to tackle these problems. Pseudocode is something that many coders do, and you should do too, to help organize their code, and most importantly, break it down into smaller pieces. As you can tell from my pseudocode, I did not write exactly how I planned on doing everything, but I addressed the main sections of the code and determined what piece needed to do what. Personally, I tried to make my process in pseudocode very logical, using Boolean statements like if-else statements, because this is how a computer interprets code. So when making the actual code, it goes more quickly and easily. After making the pseudocode, you can tell from my rough timeline how quickly the coding went. So now I'd like to show you how I tackled these problems. Because I was letting players make their own games, I could not know how many rooms there were, how many containers were in each room, or how many items were in each container in a room, which meant I had a problem. How could I store these things in a computer's memory? The technique I used to solve this problem was defining a class that employs a system of nested structure arrays, or in more simple terms, I made my own special data types that were lists of objects, and each object had properties such as a name, a description, and a list of things in it, such as items. This is a visual representation of my structure arrays. This technique is especially effective in MATLAB when you have objects within objects, but you don't know how many, because MATLAB, unlike many other programming languages, allows you to change the length of an array, or in this case, the number of items, after you've already created it. Finally, what I learned when I made this program is something that I'm sure all experienced programmers would tell you. Never let the user type what they want. When I got people to playtest the game, it became very clear how difficult it is to predict what a player might type. Real people, especially those who are not programmers, do not understand how the game works. So they enter the most bizarre things. As a programmer, it is very difficult for me to even imagine what they might type, because I made the game, so I know what you're supposed to do and type. So to account for this, I made a custom function in MATLAB that uses quite a few techniques involving regular expressions to try and guess what the player might type if they type something incorrect. This is a bit too complicated to explain, so instead, my advice to you if you're ever trying to interpret some user input is to get people who do not know how to program to test it for you, because you would not believe the strange things they might type. In conclusion, if you're a programmer or you want to get into programming, my advice to you is to just start coding. Even if it's a silly game like this, you can learn a lot from the experience like I did and have fun doing it. Thanks for listening.